Okay, good morning. Thank you very much to all participants in this training session, and thank you to our host institution, CITO, the Central Information and Technology Office. Welcome to the first dedicated training in open data of the project Promoting an Open Government Ecosystem in Belize, implemented by the Trust for the Americas and the Department for Effective Public Management of the OAS with the support of the Embassy of the United States of America in Belize. Today, we especially would like to thank the Latin American Open Data Initiative, ILDA, for its acronym in Spanish, who will not only deliver this first presentation of the training, but who is also the main organization with who the OAS have partnered in for the advancement of open data in the region. This since its inception. So thank you to its executive director, Mr. Fabrizio Scrollini, for joining us this morning. Mr. Scrollini is connecting from Montevideo in Uruguay, if I'm not mistaken. My name is Mike Mora, and I am a specialist of the Department for Effective Public Management of the OAS, from where I coordinate activities in different areas of as open data, open government, and digital government, among some of them. The open data training session that we begin today are oriented. The sessions that we begin today are oriented to a reduced group of government officers, that is you, that are connected in Belize. For the purpose of this project, we consider the Open Government Champion Network of Belize. That is important for ourselves, for our project, and of course for our goals with this project. Our goal is to embrace, specialize, and develop skills in a dedicated group of officers that can work as agents for change in Belize, willing to innovate and transcend in public service delivery through open government. This is a cutting-edge area of public administration that is thriving worldwide, and we're happy that we could, together with the Trust for the Americas and the support of ILDA in this case, be with you today to do so. So I want to thank you for your attendance and commitment. Please do not miss any of the following sessions of the training program, as these sessions have been coordinated in a progressive way. We encourage you to revere the knowledge that you are about to receive with colleagues in your institutions and also with other institutions. The video and materials related to the session will be shared with you afterwards as well. For questions about the project and how to engage, please contact our project coordinator in Belize, Mr. Henry Wade, who is also connected in this session, and we're going to hear from him at the end during the Q&A session. So thank you, Henry, also. Any questions about the project, how to engage with him. At the end of this session, as I mentioned, we will have a time for questions and answers with the speaker, with Mr. Scrollini. So we ask you to please prepare your questions ahead of time so we don't wait until the end for those questions. Without further ado, I would like to present the speaker of the day, Mr. Fabrizio Scrollini. We're lucky to have him here with us, as Mr. Scrollini is the most renowned expert, advocate, and enthusiast in open data of the Americas region, and one of the most prominent experts worldwide. This region is lucky to have him, and to him, the region owes a great deal of giving his energy, dedication, and contributions in open data. Beyond his role as Executive Director of ILDA, Mr. Scrollini is a member of the Open Data Network for Development, OD4D. He's also President of Data Uruguay, an association that builds civic technology to promote human development. He's also a co-founder of Abrelatam and Condatos, the regional open data conferences imparted annually since 2013, and also is an advisor of the International Open Data Charter. He worked with governments, regulatory agencies, and civil society organizations locally and internationally on issues related to transparency, access to public information, open data, and public sector reform. He holds a PhD in government from the London School of Economics and Political Science, LSE. So thank you very much, Fabrizio. You can open your mic anytime and begin the presentation while I load him. I put it in your screen.
Well, thank you very much, Mike, for this kind introduction. I mean, it's amazing to be part of this program and to support our colleagues at the Organization of American States. Like, it's been a great journey we took together since the early days of this agenda in Latin America back in 2010, 2012. So it's been a long journey, and we are really happy to join you and your colleagues in expanding this work and in expanding this agenda. So I prepare, as Mike mentioned, I'm the coordinator of the Latin American Open Data Initiative. Um, so ILDA is, or Iniciativa Latinoamericana por los Datos Abiertos in Spanish. That's the acronym ILDA. That it's kindly supported by the International Development Research Center from Canada, IDRC, and Avina Foundation. And we are a part of the Open Data for Development Network, also coordinated by IDRC. So we were set up in 2010 as a research project by the International Development Research Center and Avina Foundation to explore and understand the emerging impact of open data in Latin America. And at the beginning, what we ended up doing was not only explore and understand, but also catalyze the action around open data. That's the reason Mike was mentioning that we were developing all this work and in Latin America mostly, and also coordinating with our colleagues in the Caribbean and other parts of the world. So before, as I understand, this is your first approach to open data, and so I guess that there are a few questions that you will wonder around. Data for what at the end of the day? What's the story with open data? Why people keep talking about it? And I will say that if you think about your daily life, if you think about your daily engagement with several topics, data is essential for every decision you make, whether whether you acknowledge that, whether you're aware of that or not. So, for instance, like what is your closest hospital or clinic? Um, what kind of services do they provide? How much does it cost to get medicines in these hospitals? Could you get a better service, or other provider? Like, could you get a better service somewhere else? And these are, as the presentation indicates, very basic questions that essentially shape uh, the way we understand our life. I'm going to switch the camera off because the transmission seems to be breaking. So I apologize for this. Um, let's see if you can hear me better now. Yes, stop the camera. Mm. Mm-mm. No, it doesn't want to switch off. Switch off. Um, can you hear me properly again? Um, Hello again. Fabrizio freezing here. Right. So I turn off my camera.
Yes, Fabrizio.
Better? Yes. Okay.
You hear-
So where did you miss me, Mike? I can restart this basically. So data is essential for many of our daily life activities as of now. Okay. Um, right. So can you hear me? Okay. Okay. Excellent. So basically, I was telling you about the importance of data in your daily life, like whether a hospital, whether the medicines you get, whether it's about the better service you can get from one provider or another, and these are very basic questions that essentially shape the way we understand our daily routines, and for very crucial activities. And at the end of the day, this is how you make decisions, but these decisions are mostly based on public data that has to or should be available, but most of the time is not available. This is the reason a bunch of Uruguayans in this little country down south created the website that you are getting to see over here, named A Tu Servicio, or At Your Service. So this website allows you to compare between several, medical providers in Uruguay, letting you to know not only the, geographical ubication or the geographical information about the provider, like where do they have the clinics, where do they have the hospital, but also like how much they charge, the performance they are supposed to have, and allows you to compare basically among these providers who which provider will be better for you. So at the end of the day, the website, it seems pretty simple. It seems pretty, something that anyone should be able to have. And I can type the link to the website over here. But this website, as you see it today, took a lot of work to develop, because at the end of the day, the data behind this website was not, particularly available. So it took me, and it took most of our guys a lot of effort. I'm just shifting here because there's a bit of background noise. So it took us a lot of effort, basically, to develop the site, mostly to get the data out. Like, most of this data was not in the public domain. Most of this data was not in a reusable format. Most of this data was not accessed by people, even inside the government. So when this data was initially retrieved, there was a lot of mistakes around the data itself, and also, there were a lot of issues around the quality, but also the accuracy of this data. Like, for instance, some of this data you get to see, like the number of patients of one particular provider, they essentially were wrong. Like, the public authorities did not have the accurate data on this, and as a result, they were making mistakes in other several calculations. By opening it up and allowing a lot of people to see the data, they were able to identify and spot the mistakes and enable Uruguayan citizens to, make informed choices. In the Uruguayan case, this is particularly important because in the month of February, you are allowed to change or switch providers. So it's a very crucial time. Now, initially, when this data was not available, the only way to find out was through, news media, that, somehow they will manage to get this data either because of a leak from the public administration or a freedom of information request. And only around 100 people will have this data. and occasionally an article will be published here or there. By releasing this data in the latest edition of Servicio, the Servicio is now 4 years old, more than 60,000 people access the website. So in a way, by releasing the information, we got more people involved in, improving health service delivery. We improved the data behind this, and the government also managed to essentially also, get some savings, because some of the prices that were, with this website, that collected in this website, were essentially, essentially there were mistakes in how those prices were calculated from some of the medicines. So as a result, essentially people got cheaper medicines as well. So this is a case in where opening data allowed for all these different impacts in public administration, in improving basically, data quality, in improving, a particular area such as health service delivery, because service improved after this, in saving some money, like was not the original idea, but was there, and also it helped, analysts to improve their work inside public administration, and most notably, of course, it helped Uruguayan citizens to make an informed decision, which is, at the end of the day, what we want, people to do with data. But what is this open data thing? I mean, if we were to define this, what we are talking about is basically, when I say open data, there are several ways of framing this. Like the most, let's say, accepted definition is this one I got here. Hang on, like we have a problem here holding this. There we go. Open means that anyone can freely access, use, modify, and share for any purpose, subject at most to requirements that preserve the provenance and openness of data. Or, open data can be seen, as content that can be freely used, modified, and shared by anyone for any purpose. So the idea is that once you release the data, which is in this case, public data, it can potentially be repurposed by other people. In the case of Auto Servicio, actually, other people use this data for academic research, for for other kind of analysis that essentially the data allow for this. And it seems very intuitive now, but 10 years ago, this was not very, I would say, well received, because people had this idea that the data was something that you should hold or you should own somehow. And the element here, the key element, is the idea of public data. This is data that was already supposed to be public, and usually is trapped in a PDF, is trapped in a sort of, it's trapped in any kind of format that does not allow redistribution. So the definition I got here is, as you can see, has a technical element, which is about the way information is shared, and
I
has
think
a
that
legal
you were breaking
element
up a
as
bit.
well. It's about the license the information has.
Mm,
So the technical bit, when you think about free
We
free
can go back to
systems,
the definition
or free
as you were
formats,
reading the
a
first
format that basically any machine,
text
any
box
tool
on the
can be
screen,
used
and see we can get from there.
to essentially read it and potentially analyze it. And when we talk about the legal aspect of this, it's mostly about the way information is shared. Okay, breaking up a bit. I'm not sure where did you miss me. Can you hear me correctly now? Can you hear me correctly now? Sorry, I just would like to confirm that I'm not breaking up and you can hear me correctly. If someone can type over there. So I don't know what. Okay. 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 So basically, what we have in the definition is basically a legal and a technical definition. So open means that anyone can freely access, use, and modify and share for any purpose. That means that you need a technical standard, like in a way, a technical like files or data that is shared and distributed. They need to be in an open standard. That's one part of it, and the other part of it is that you need the legal backup to essentially allow for this distribution of information. There has to be freely used and modify and share, but there has to be a legal entity that allows you to do that. And most of the time, these are licenses. I like the that's the complex part of it. Not complex, but the important part of it. Um, so so why this is important? Like why this legal and technical standard is important. Um, I guess that there are four elements that you would like to consider in terms of you know um, impact of this. And one of these things is basically, it's about transparency. It's about basically allowing citizens to understand how the government works. So there is an important element of how open data contributes to transparency in public administration. So that's one element there. There's another element about innovation, about making things in a different way, and making things in ways that are innovative and that are different, and potentially can save money, potentially could save could save certain kind of value to administration. There is a matter of economic value as well. It's also about basically getting some money out of this data, and then there is an issue of social value. Essentially, the use of data can generate some social value, and
Fabrizio,
it's
this is
important to
Mike.
consider those.
Hopefully, you can hear me.
So,
Let's
transparency-wise, information is the currency of democracy.
same level.
That's ease,
I understand
and
the audio is
I
not
don't
going
know
well
what can I do
to all
about
of
it.
us.
I'm afraid.
So if you can hear me, we can take just a quick break, and we start right there in the innovation point. Uh,
Okay. So you miss me.
so thank you all. Just a little break so we can have Fabricio to reconnect and see if the audio works best. I guess we won't get the audio um, the same depending on our connectivity, but yes, we can try Let's see if he can reconnect Fabrizio and see if it works better. Sometimes it's just a connection that doesn't go well, and a reconnect could do a great deal. So let's see how that works. Just a little break, and we take from the innovation item that was on the list here. Thank you for your understanding and patience. In the meantime, we have shared some links on the chat that we encourage you to visit so you can learn more about ILDA and also about some of the items, some of the experiences that Fabrizio had shared, very important practical experiences of usage of open data. So we have somebody in the chat as a guest who has stated that had made a question. The methodology for questions will be taking questions throughout the presentation, save them for the end so that we can accumulate all questions for a Q&A at the end. Thank you very much. Now, if you could address yourself with name and institution, that'll be great. We can identify you that way. Thank you. Fabricio's back, so we're gonna get him back into his role and see if it works better. So you're back on the presenter's role, Fabricio. Open your mic and let's see if it works best.
Right, so can you hear me now? Is this okay? Could someone chat if you can, could someone put in the chat if you can hear me okay?
Yeah, still breaking up a bit, Fabricio.
No. Yeah, I don't know, maybe it's the connection, I'm sorry. Yeah. There's not much I can do about it really. And try a different connection, but I assume it's not going to be better than this. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. There seems to be mixed reviews about. I can hear you, but you haven't said much. That's a good one. Right. All right. So I can. Okay. Good. Okay. I will go for 2 minutes, and you can tell me over there if you can't hear. So I was telling you that this idea of open data is important because of 4 critical factors, if you want. It's important because of transparency in public administration. As you probably know, this is an important matter, regardless, of the technology involved. It's a matter of, allowing people to let people know how the administration works. There is an issue about innovation as well. Open data can impact the way administration does things, and essentially, could save costs, could enable public servants to work better. And there is finally an issue of economic and social value. So the release of open data could help public administration to create or help to contribute towards economic and social value. So those things there are important. As I was going on to move to the idea of transparency. Why transparency is important? Well, information is the currency of democracy, after all. And this is a phrase I took from Thomas Jefferson. But if you look at it, it's very intuitive and very important. Like you cannot have a functioning democracy without public information. It's a bit like oxygen, right? If you don't have public information, there's no way you can run a democratic regime. Now, the question, in the digital age, which is that where we are moving, is how this information is distributed. And there you will have all these discussions about the role of social media, particularly Twitter, Facebook, and others. But also, how the government, releases information that informs citizenry. And that's where open data plays a role. So one example I got from the United States is the portal userspending.gov, which I'm going to type over here. So over there, I think that the portal is very impressive because it literally helps you to understand how much the United States government is spending across several departments and across different institutions. And you're allowed to know basically how each budget is executed. So who gets what in terms of public money. And these are usually very complex matters. Like and now basically the United States government is putting that information out there for free for you to analyze, but also for you to take and create different visualizations and different analysis that they are not providing for you in this website. So this is the open data at its essence, I would say, showing the value of the United States budget on the United States money, and the tool is used obviously by citizens, but most of the time it's used by public servants themselves who want to understand a bit more about the use of public money for other purposes. So there's one thing over there that I think is interesting to look into. So are you listening to me okay, or I'm still breaking? If so, I can try to change the connection. Better. Okay, much. Okay, good. Excellent. So the other idea, the other project I would like to show you, which is there are many of them, hundreds of them. Just picking two because I think they're important. Is this idea of they buy for you, which is a new website, like newly minted basically, that essentially analyzes the European Union procurement data, and it essentially allows you to explore not only the public spending and the corporate data, but also to create your own analysis around this. And I think that's fascinating. Like this data was not available there in the European Union, let's say 2 years ago. This is something where our region has certain leverage or certain advantage, because in some parts of Latin America this information has been available. But the use of data is the key part here. And again, like who is hiring? Who are we hiring to perform public works? Well, this kind of platforms allows us to know basically, and to compare basically, which is the best provider, which is the best contractor, how long does it take to finish a contract, and so on, right? Like that's the part that we think it's important to showcase of the value of open data in this field. And you will find a lot of projects that the goal they have is to improve transparency in public administration. And this in itself is really something that is very valuable in itself. So the next slide I have here is mostly about innovation, and there are things you can do and are fun to do as well. And this is a very good example I got from Argentina, and this example, like not the previous one, like was like innovation and fun. Well, there you can essentially put your name and the year you were born, and basically will tell you, the website will tell you, which names were popular in your date. Like for instance, Fabrizio was not relatively a very popular name in 1981, and so on. But why would you do this? Well, if you have a child, or if you're expecting a child, you would like to know how popular the name of the child has been across the years. And this is one of the most used websites in Argentina at the moment. Like, and it's based on open data coming from the from the birth registry that allowed essentially this application to emerge. And this it's a way of showing the performance of open data projects, like why people will engage with this. And we wouldn't have this if the data was not open and if people were not, able to access it. And then, of course, there's the work of our colleagues in Argentina, just putting the website over there. But this is, this is a very good example of how you can essentially be a bit innovative and fun and do stuff that usually you will not see in public administration are doable. But then, of course, we can be more serious about it, and Argentina is a big country, and as a result, you have also parts of Argentina that are not mapped, or small villages that are not basically incorporated in maps. So this is where our colleagues at the Maction Labs were able to extract knowledge from satellite imagery and georeference data, all of this data open, and using advanced machine learning and computer vision techniques, they developed a tool that allows Argentinian policymakers to identify where these places are and essentially allows them to plan for this particular contingency. So, where do you have these particular areas of the city that are now either occupied by certain groups of people, and also where do you have these areas where you could design an intervention that could essentially add value to society. Like, do we need electricity over there? Do we need pipes? Do we need right? Do we need what kind of services will this area need? And this is also done not only through the use of data, but it's open data that allows this development to emerge. So keep trying your names over there. There is also in Argentina, the reason I'm using these examples from Argentina is mostly because I also want to show you that in Latin America there are a lot of people doing interesting stuff. This is a thing that not only happens in the United States, Canada, or Europe. Like in the region, there are a lot of people doing great work. And so this is the case of Properati, which actually operates across Latin America. And it's a website that, based on georeference data and data from properties, allows you to find your home, like your next home, basically. So they managed to get data out of many cities in Latin America, but mostly from the city of Buenos Aires initially. And from there, they allow you to, according to certain parameters, allow you to plan for the best case scenario for buying a home or for understanding the value of your home. And then you take it from there. Like, what's beautiful about Properati is they also release data, because it's hard work to get data. So they essentially, once they manage to get hold of the data, they release it for others to reuse, and for that they're very loved in the open data community, I will say. But it's a business model in itself. So it's not only a bunch of hippies asking you to open data because they want a transparent world, or they want a love of data kind of things. It's also about people making money and economic value out of the public data, which leads to other kind of discussions about who should pay for public data and in which way. But that's a good example of how it works. Another good example of the economic value of public data is the case of open corporates. Now, you probably noticed, or you probably heard about the cases of Panama Papers and other papers across the world. And there's a big problem there about who is who making businesses, right? So this database allows you to understand who is who in businesses, and allows you to track all the companies across several jurisdictions. And it's also a way of creating economic value, but also ways of helping markets to function better, right? You want trust, you want in market institutions, and to develop that you need information. But also they are a business, like they make money out of the use of data, and that essentially is public data most of the time, right? There's another good example here, which is come from New York, basically. Which is Enigma, which is a company that essentially sells analytics on data. And often these kind of companies are a bit more, I would say, a bit more cutting edge in the sense that they are also mixing private data or personal data, if you want, and other sources of data. But in a way, they're also taking, value of the open data that governments releases. So in a way, it's also a good example of how open data can create economic value. Um, and moving forward, like if we were to move forward to other topics, like so the idea of social value of open data is important. Like it's not only about making money; it's about creating value for the people. And this is a good example of how, for instance, a very simple data set can create a lot of social value, like the case of New York inspection scores. Now, this is a big city and you don't know where to eat, and some places are safer than others, basically. And so these people, got hold of that data set and created an application and several visualizations that allows you to go around New York and essentially get to know, which restaurant is actually performing great in terms of food quality, not only in how it tastes, but also in the fact that they pass the inspections, and who actually doesn't do a great job. So those two things are important there, and there are several gadgets and applications that allows you to do this. They think are very good cases for the social value of data, like and allowing people to make informed choices about where to eat or what to do. And most of the time, like releasing these data sets is very cost efficient. Like most of these data sets are somewhere in a trap in an Excel, trapped in a small computer, and not available for people to use. But at the end of the day, when I'm telling you this, okay, breaking again. Yeah. Okay. I can try to switch my connection. Hello, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me? Okay, I will keep trying. Georgina, let me know if you can hear me correctly. Uh, there's a delay. Okay. Okay, so if I test 1, 2, 3, can you hear me now, Georgina? Great. Okay, so I keep moving. So and keep me posted if you don't hear me. So all these apps are fantastic, but at the end of the day, it's mostly about the people involved in building this. And so, as you can see, this was the first community of people gathered in 2013 working on this in Montevideo, Uruguay. This is 2016 crowd in Colombia. That's where Mike is from. And as you can see, the crowd grew exponentially. And then we have the latest event, which happened in Costa Rica. And as you can see, the crowd grew, wow, a lot. Like this is a whole community of public servants and civil society activists and private entrepreneurs essentially gathering around this event called Abre Latam and Condatos, which is part of the community of people building these apps. So at the end of the day, it's not only about the app, but about the connection between the people working around this, and creating these, policies, and creating these, either market solutions or social solutions or government solutions that are available for others to use and reuse. So the message I would like to, it's not only about the data, but it's about the people you connect and the people you enable to build things, or the people you enable to analyze things, or the people you enable to move forward some of the topics, complex topics that emerges. So if you want to do that, you need to train the people and public servants as well. And so a good example of this is what our colleagues are doing. It's an initiative called the School of Data. And the School of Data is basically this training initiative initially developed by the Open Knowledge Foundation, and today it's carried forward by our colleagues of Social TIC in Latin America. And what they do is that they train, they provide several training materials for people curious about the data, how to use data, and essentially to train them as data activists, as data doers, and data people that are able to deliver value out of the data. And I think it's a great training initiative that enables people to have the skills and to have the capability, basically, to use data and the confidence to use data in their own setting. This is a bit what happened in Costa Rica, where we are working with the Costa Rica government, and we work also with the Organization of American States, which leads us to the next slide, which is about policies. Like, most of this stuff is amazing. Most of this stuff is it shows a lot the value of the data, but also you will need to understand that there is less glamorous work, but equally important work that people like myself and Mike and others develop, which is the design of open data policies, because no government is willing to release data out of the blue. Like, there has to be some sort of rules and regulations and principles, and this is the work we developed with Mike and other colleagues from OAS in Costa Rica and in other countries, trying to show how a community, because not only about the government, but about the private sector and about civil society, can come together to design open data policies that are sound and that essentially provide a framework for governments to release data. And this is most of the time coordinated with a lot of with people working as well in the access to information field, or as probably it's freedom of information, depending on the regulation, and journalists and people working as well in the tech field. So it's a good mix of people that comes together to discuss these policies and to make them real, basically. And so, as you can see in this picture, there's the president of Costa Rica signing it now. So what are we focusing these days? Where are we working now? So ILDA is we are still a research initiative. So we are trying to understand, if civic technology and open data in particular can contribute to mitigate violence against women, and if so, how? So currently as well, with our colleagues from OAS and the government of Argentina and potentially the government of Uruguay, we are also working on, trying to get a better record of femicides in the region. So there is a challenge there to standardize data and potentially develop uses around visualization that helps us to understand a bit more about why this kind of violence emerged against women, and this is an important part of our work. So it's not only about the shiny app; it's also about engaging with hardcore social issues where data can play a role. We are also engaging with our colleagues from OAS and other partners in the open contracting agenda. So how, the idea of contracts, of open contracts, can foster transparency and accountability, benefiting local stakeholders. So it's, this idea of how to track, public expenses and public contracts across countries, which are important, in an age in which we all need to understand the expectations of our citizenry and the fight against corruption. I think this is a good a good contribution. And then, of course, we are also exploring uses of data in terms of machine learning and artificial intelligence, an agenda that is very popular these days. But we are more into trying to understand, the ethics of it, and we think that that's part of a discussion we would like to see emerging in Latin America. And also we are focusing, as well on. Oh, oops, there we go. We're focusing as well on, there we go, scaling up and adapting projects in Latin America. That's something that, what works and can it scale? That's one thing. What kind of skills do different groups need to engage with this agenda? That we are working as well with our colleagues of the School of Data. And strategic support, how can we better support existing initiatives on the ground that could benefit from our experience or from ILDA's experience? ILDA is also evolving from a research initiative to an organization, so that's part of our transition, and so it's part of what we do. So if I were to synthesize this presentation in four issues, like understand that open data is basically, yes, a technical and a legal issue about the release of public data, and that you have to have both, right? You need to have the technical aspects, which is mostly about the formats in which data is published, and also, the legal aspect of it. And these two are important. And you have multiple uses of open data, and I will argue that you have transparency, social, economic, and innovation as the four key areas. Is as important to look into, and you can see there are plenty of several uses you can develop there. Public administration is a key actor, not only because it provides data, but also it can shape the way data is used. If the public administration involved is clever enough, it can certainly shape the future of the use of data. Um, and understand as well that there are other topics emerging, but that the key issue here is about the people. It's about how the use of data will connect people to deliver better social and economic value for our societies. So, so in a way, it's a way of saying that what you are looking here is, in a way, it's not only emerging; it's now established topic that is having an impact on several sectors and areas, and setting up clear policies around open data in countries is part of a contribution for what open government will look like in the digital age. So it's not only about data, it's about how you change government as well into a more data-driven government, into a more efficient government, but also into a more open government in the digital age. And to do that, you need people like public servants, entrepreneurs, civil society, which at the end of the day are the ones essentially working with this data to solve these complex problems our societies are facing. And that will be it.
Fabrizio, thank you very much. This is Mike again here for your presentation at the very end
Georgia, what
this
what would you
uh,
like me
probably
to repeat?
last contribution you were trying to do as you were breaking up.
So mostly I would say it.
Okay, let's try again.
Can you hear me properly?
Go on, Fabrizio.
Okay, so basically, what I was saying is like if you were to keep this in mind, like 4 or 5 things to keep in mind is like remember there's a technical and legal aspect of open data. That it's not only about the data, but the people you connect by building projects around open data. That there are 4 areas or 5 areas that you will argue that open data is important, such as innovation, transparency, social, and economic value. And also, remember the importance of public administration in shaping the open data field, because public administration holds the data and can be also a very important user of data. And finally, I think it's about developing these projects and turning basically using data as part of a vision for open government in the digital age. That will be my contribution to this.
Thank you very much, Fabrizio. I think we got that last part very well. It was very well captured. Thank you very much. So again, thank you to all participants. This is Mike again here. We're about to enter the Q&A session. I'm sure this presentation had been very informational, but also most likely has raised a lot of questions for you. So this is the moment. We will try our best if the audio works fine to get responses from Fabrizio, who can also, I'm sure, try the chat to respond or share some information if we continue having troubles with the audio. But so far it's fine. So I want to thank Fabrizio for the presentation, very insightful presentation, a lot of material on that presentation. We went from the basics to more elaborated uh, concepts of open data. So thank you very much for that. So from this time on, I actually want to call Henry Wade to the podium, our project coordinator in Belize, who deals with the day-to-day of this project on the ground. And so he can coordinate the Q&A session. Henry, if you can open your mic and test, that will be great. Please, if you had, we had captured the questions that people have presented in the chat, but if you can, if you have any other one, please feel free to leave it in the chat. We get it from there to start responding these questions. Henry, is your mic open?
Hi. Good morning, Mike. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay.
Maybe a little low. If you can get closer to the mic.
Okay. Is this better?
I don't know. Let's wait for a response from the rest of the people on the chat to see what they tell us. I can hear you well, but hearing fine. Perfect. Good. Go on, Henry. Q&A is all yours.
Yes. Good morning again, everyone. Thank you all for participating in this first of several training sessions on open data. Again, I want to reiterate Mike's big thank you to Fabrizio. That was very, very informative. I know I learned quite a bit, and I'm sure our participants also share the same. So I want to start off. I saw we had a first question by Mr. Alcacer from the Belize Police Department. He noted or was wondering what would be some of the how does the country embrace open data if I didn't if I'm correct, and also what would be some of the challenges.
Right.
So I think we could have Fabrizio take that first one.
Sure. Like the challenges around open data are multiple. And it's important to keep that in mind. So, for instance, the first challenge, mostly in public administration, is around getting people to open data. That's part of a new ethos in public administration. Like most of public administration people or public servants are not used to this, and so as a result, that is a new ethos essentially introduced in public administration. That's that the cultural shift is important. The second issue around the data revolution, if you want, or the open data field, is about enabling public servants to have skills to use data for their own purposes. And some of these skills are very simple. Either it's about handling Excel, or it's about handling some software that allows you for data analysis and so on. But it's important to enable public servants and enable public administration more generally to use these tools. And then the third challenge I find is almost a few projects are able to evolve. Um, it, it's the problem of getting discussion, a serious discussion about the limits between the private and open, right? So what's open, what's private, or what should be publicly available and what shouldn't be publicly available. But that's a limit that each society needs to test and see what's comfortable with, basically.
Okay, I'm noticing that some of the participants are mentioning that the audio is breaking up a bit. I'm hearing quite well. I guess we could ask the chat room, was the answer received okay? Are there any portions of it you'd like Fabrizio to review or repeat? Okay. Okay, great. So I'm seeing comments, a lot of comments, Fabrizio. So again, just want to repeat what Mike had mentioned, guys. I know going over the different slides that Fabrizio had mentioned and shared with us, I know that there are particularly a lot of questions or maybe just some things you'd like to have cleared up. This is the opportunity for us to type our questions in here now. I see Mr. Kawich from DFC. How are the countries embracing the Open Data Initiative?
Some countries are doing quite well.
Yes, Fabrizio. So, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So like some countries are doing quite well in Latin America. They set up open data policies. They have offices in charge of these policies, and as a result, they have several initiatives like developing data portals. They are developing specific initiatives on the use of data for solving social challenges, such as the cases of femicides, contracts, budgets, different sectors where data is crucial, and to develop tools around this data is crucial. So open data is often the excuse to say, okay, so how do we open up this and use it for our purposes? And so as a result, we are getting a lot of traction in that regard. Some countries are a bit slow, I will say, sometimes because they don't fully agree with the principle of openness. Some countries in the region are not quite into openness, I would say, and other countries as well. Are a bit more slow, basically usually because of capacity issues.
Excellent. So in the case of Belize, I guess my question would be on my end, Fabrizio. Being a small population that we are with limited resources, and as you mentioned, one of the key challenges would be technical capacity. What would be sort of the ideal route for Belize to start to pursue initiatives in the area of open data?
It's always important to consider context and to consider what people in Belize thinks are the most crucial areas where the use of data can add value to you, basically. So for instance, like if you were to say, well, we have here an issue of we would like to show our government is more transparent, not only because it's important to us, but also because it shows to a different
Fabrizio, we lost you.
Okay. Can you hear me now? 1, 2, 3.
Yes, now you're back with us. Yes, we lost you
Okay.
for a few seconds there.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, sorry. So what I was saying is like it depends on your priorities. But for instance, like what I think is important to consider is like either it's about you want to show your population or partners across the globe that you are a transparent government. That's one way of engaging with this, saying like, well, transparency is important. Our people are demanding this. Our international partners are demanding it, or are essentially, essentially grading us, whether it's our national debt or our, I don't know, our any kind of interactions we have, they demand basically we are more transparent. Okay, fine. We're going to use open data to essentially improve our transparency in key areas. That's one way of looking at it. Other way of looking at it is like, okay, so what about the services we provide at a local level? What about our how often do we repair our streets? How often do we repair our potholes and so on? And to develop tools around service delivery is also a good way to start as well because it shows the value and the use of open data. Another way of doing this is in key sectors when you say, well, you know what? In this sector, our people are demanding much more from us. So how an open data initiative can at least help to understand a bit more about this sector? Potentially, it could be any sector, but tourism, I assume, is one of them. Mm, I assume you lost me.
Okay, we have another question from Inaldi Gomez. I guess this is more of an origin question in open data. Who really championed the open data initiative? Uh, was it public officers? Was there an organization, or was it organically grown from?
That's a great question. Most of the
Are
time,
you
it's a
hearing me,
partner.
Fabrizio?
Yes. Yes, I am hearing you, but you are not hearing me.
Fabrizio, are you hearing me?
Yes. Yes, I am hearing you, but I'm not sure if you are hearing
Yes,
me.
you're okay.
Good. So it's
Now we're hearing you clear.
okay. So it's usually a partnership between civil servants and civil society organizations, and
Okay.
and usually
Okay. Excellent. And
projects like the one Mike is running actually helps to build that kind of alliance.
absolutely right. As Mike alluded to earlier, the introduction, the project here in Belize is the promotion of an open government ecosystem here in Belize with the support of the Trust for the Americas, the Organization of American States, and being funded by the U.S. Embassy here in Belmopan. So it's a collaboration of international partners coming into Belize to develop and foster this ecosystem. So indeed, you're right in that, Fabrizio. Next question goes to Mr. Juan Pablo, I believe from Ministry of Health. What measures/indicators are recommended in terms of data maturity and quality in order to assess whether a sector is ready to implement open data? That's a very
Uh,
good question.
yeah, I mean, the key aspect is like is to start this in an incremental way. So this is a bit like having children. Like you're never ready, right? Until your children come, just comes to life basically, and then you need to deal with that. And I guess it's a bit like that to develop an incremental approach in areas that have high consensus on releasing data, and then you can apply to those certain frameworks and certain certain I would say maturity frameworks or certain evaluations. One tool potentially is the Open Data Barometer, for instance. But I will say that it's not about assessing a sector to check if it's ready. It's more about starting small in one sector and then essentially keep it from there.
So in incremental phases, and not in a whole meal fashion. I guess a follow-up question to that would be, Fabrizio, for organizations, and we have all government organizations joining us here, departments and different ministries, IT professionals in all those departments. What recommendations or advice would you give them to start to perhaps prepare or alter their current work, to start to get ready for the proper storage of data, or identification of data that could perhaps be useful in incremental ways as they move forward with engaging in open data within their respective department or ministry?
Sure, like what's important, like the first steps is make sure that people around the department understand what open data is, and so there's a bit of evangelizing inside the ministry. That's important, because then once you have an open data policy, then the second step, make sure that people know about this policy, because you will have people asking for data, and so you need to make sure that people are at least aware of that. Then I think it's important to know your audience, like who will come to you asking for data, and approach them and set up either, it's an informal gathering, or it's a meeting at the embassy, or it's very context dependent, but set up a place when you can engage the audience, right? Like the people that will use your data, and explore what kind of projects you could develop together. It could come from, like either better visualizations that you won't have the time to provide, that they could provide, or information that was not there and should be there, and that potentially leads us to an effort to collect more information about a certain topic. And then the other issues, like always keep an open mind and an open channel for people to approach you. Some of the requests might seem unreasonable initially, and then you will need to essentially allow people to tell the idea why they want this data, what are they going to use it for, and so they can tell you, and so you establish exchange about the use of that data.
Excellent. We have another question from Mr. Byron Tessicum. What types of data should be shared, and to what extent, he's asking the level of details that can be made public?
It depends. Like, it depends on the topic. It depends on the sector. Like, for instance, like if you were to share health service related data, you could do it, but you will need to ensure that this is, anonymized in ways that cannot re-identify individuals. If you were, sharing information about plots of lands or other kind of issues, that shouldn't be a problem. Like, it's mostly about the topic and how sensible in each context is. ideally, in an ideal open data world, granularity, is very important. And because it allows you for better analysis.
So it's content specific. Okay, excellent. We have another question from Miss Bowen. Can you clarify a bit around the point you mentioned in your presentation under current focus contracting? Okay, Miss Bowen, could is that clear for you, Fabrizio? Or would you like her to expand on that a bit?
Sure, what we are doing there is basically understanding whether and how the release of open data, and particularly in the sector of open contracts or public procurement, helps local providers to either bid in systems that are usually excluded, or to increase the competition in these systems, or to increase the transparency in the system. So it's not only about the standard of data per se, but also how this standardization of information helps potentially, local local counterparts to improve either business or the skills or the system itself.
Okay, excellent. I note a comment that you mentioned earlier, Fabrizio. Agencies of e-government or digital government usually take the lead in this area. Could you explain how these agencies would go about doing that?
Sure. Usually, what they have is an open data working group that they chair, but it's not. They are not alone. Basically, they work with others, and they chair a group that mostly work on open data standards and open data uses. So So in a way, they take the lead because they are technically able or apt to take the lead. But again, they work with others to make sure that it works.
Okay, great. So you're and with this working group, what typically would be the makeup of the working group in terms of the technical capacities?
Sure, you will have people coming from engineering backgrounds. That's one part of the thing. But also you will have you know policy planners. You will have sector specific people, like people working on health, people working on budgets. The ministries of institutes of statistics are good partners as well. And I guess that's basically the group of people that will be joining you. Occasionally, you will find some office of management and budget joining as well. These boards basically, but they are not huge bureaucracies. It's mostly a coordinating agency, or coordinating
Correct.
board, I would say.
Correct. Okay. Okay. Yes. All right. I'm seeing Mike is making some comments in the chat room. Okay. And any other questions, guys?
Oh yeah, and naturally you will have. I mean, it's really important to have people from civil society and the private sector on board as well. Like they should be part of this governance somehow.
Indeed. Indeed. So you have that cross pollination of ideas and efforts. Any other questions from the participants?
One here from Mike Mora. Henry, if you allow me.
Go ahead, Mike.
As per the experience that we have seen, we have lived in different uh, technical assistance projects that we have implemented together with ILDA for the development of national open data national policies, we have seen the stress and the initial stress and the initial fear that face government officials when talking about opening data. Um, the good news about it is that it has shown to be quickly diminished after there's a lot more understanding about how to go about opening public data. So I wanted to ask Fabrizio uh, for any insights on the considerations that have to be made when opening data about personal data or sensitive data um, from the government side and the actual citizens. So my idea with this question is to start precisely um, sending a message about why we should what things we should really worry about it, what things we should really not worry about it or will diminish after all. So what is your take on protecting data and data protection and of course all this discussion about data rights? Go ahead, Fabrizio.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like the issue there is like not when you are dealing with this topic. Like there are a lot of assets, if you want, or data assets you will identify in your organization, and some of them are probably very safe to release because there's no personal data involved. And in most of our cases in Latin America, most of the data that people are publishing is not associated with private data. So no one is asking for data on your, I don't know, financial records or data on your health records. There are initiatives that are, working towards that, but it's not in the context of the open data field. So as a result, like if when you approach this topic, people say, well, I don't want to release any personal data. It's like, well, we are not asking you to do that because basically what we are asking you to do is to release data that should be public anyway, according to your legislative and system and government system that this information should be public already.
Thank you very much, Fabrizio. Henry.
Yes. Yes, I see we have another question here from Mr. Tessicum. How do we ensure that such an initiative benefits such as skill sets and local industry for the people of Belize?
That's very important.
Okay.
And that's the reason you need to involve them in the design and in the use of open data, because it's important to involve local private sector and local companies initially, so they can get a grasp, and as well as universities, right? So they can get a grasp in what is happening, so they can develop like their own products and sources.
Excellent, and that's okay. I see Mr. Alcocer had mentioned that he had asked the question. Could you share that with us? Okay, yes. Okay. Scrolling back up, it was mentioned about training and skills. Is that indicating creation of new jobs, or would there be a special group that once the data have been gained, they would deal with the rest?
Actually, in the public administration is the evolution of new jobs. Like we are seeing the evolution of the role of data analysts and the role of data officers emerging in public administration a lot. In also
And you had indicated that.
in the private sector, right?
Yeah. Sorry, Fabrizio. Sorry for the interruption. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, like it's not that. I mean, like as in other fields, like the creation of certain technology can lead to new jobs. And what we are seeing in the public administration field is that the emergence of data officers and essentially more data people around the administration.
And you noted the working group, Fabrizio. Typically, how does this come about? Is this either an organization that's created because of the an open data legislation or policy, or is this an organic creation amongst the different minds from the public sector and civil society with that collective mandate of promoting open data? What's the usual makeup of that working group?
It depends. Most of the time it's not a new organization. Most of the time it's an existing organization that takes on board the expertise of other organizations and set up a program or something like that. There has been a few developments in which people have set up a special data office. But most of the time, it's one organization
Okay.
I already established that essentially creates a program in which all the other organizations join basically, and join in an advisory and management capacity in a way, right? Like that's the importance of setting up a board. Is like the governance model is a multi-stakeholder model.
Correct. Right, and I think Mr. Alcacer is asking on top of existing responsibilities within the various organizations, the individuals who make up that working group, apart from their existing responsibilities, which can be quite a lot. Um, there also needs to be some sort of appreciation for the additional role that those individuals will play being part of that working group. How do those individuals tend to juggle those multiple responsibilities from your experience, Fabrizio?
Well, in the countries I work with, like basically they are assigned, right? Like the people, you have a national decree, and then basically you have the time of the public servants involved assigned to this particular mission. So you say it's part of the public duty basically to perform these missions or these tasks. So obviously, if you are performing, I mean, I think it would be unreasonable for someone to expect that you perform your current tasks and also new tasks on top of that. Like it's a matter of balancing basically.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. And I see we have a final question from Mr. Ball, and I see some more participants still typing, guys. So at this moment, I want to take the opportunity for us to share with Fabrizio our final questions before we wrap up today's training session. But before we do, I have a question from Mr. Gabriel Ball. Fabrizio, he's asking, I know you indicated that we start small. From your experience, what was the first sector that was easiest to open?
Streets, like open street maps. That's an easy one. Do you want to know the name or how many women are recognized in your streets? Like street names is an easy one. Maps are easy as well, and there's usually a community of open mappers here and there that are willing to work. Um, and Let me think. Then obviously some services depending on demand, like service delivery of health, potentially a service that's not easy to open but very useful. Um, Let me think a bit more. Some transparency requirements should be easy enough, right? That probably puts you at odds with some colleagues at other ministries, usually saying like, why I will do that anyway. So it's complex. Um,
Okay, so based on your experience, those would be some of the easier areas to take this initiative to start.
yeah.
Okay, excellent. So I see that if I'm not mistaken, that was our final question. So I would like to at this point close the Q&A session. Thank you so much, Fabrizio. And I'd like to pass the mic now back to Mike in DC.
Henry, thank you very much. It was a fruitful Q&A session. I'm sure a lot of more questions um, will arise. So for the participants on this session, please feel free again to reach to Mr. Henry Wade. Locally, we had already implemented some activities on-site and online. Um, for those who have not followed those, we could share the information on those. It was not specifically about open data, it was more on the open government side as a framework of the open data. But any other issue, need that you might encounter in this process, and in order to engage with the project, and of course for the implementation of open government, of open data, please channel it through Mr. Henry Wade. We will be more than happy to consider those in order to continue offering support to Belize in this process. But I want to thank you all for participating and through you to your institutions. It's very important for us as organization from American States that you participate and that you represent the institution. And of course, I want to thank Fabrizio Scrollini, Executive Director of ILDA, for participating, for sharing this insightful and valuable presentation with this group. Thank you very much, and best of success on the activities that you have programmed. Again, to CITO, our partner institution for implementation of this project. Thank you very much. I see Francisco has been active from the very beginning on this presentation. Thank you, Francisco, and through you to the rest of the executives of CITO. And just stay tuned again, as I mentioned in the beginning. There's a program of these sessions. The next one is this Thursday, and on Thursday we're gonna hear from the Open Data Charter about open data principles, and they also will explain and present about different resources that they have created together with other partner institutions for the implementation and strengthening and deepening on open data in the country. So very valuable tools. I encourage you to attend that one. I think this very short presentation also to leave you out for the rest of the presentations that we're gonna have. Thank you very much. And as finally, again, remember we'll share this resources, the material of this session with you. Talk to your colleagues, talk inside your institutions about what you have learned today. Help us spark that, and will be more than supportive within the next sessions of the project in order to support different open government, open data initiatives in Belize. So thank you for your valuable time, and for those who are following the World Cup, the game is starting in about 20 minutes. I hope you'll you'll enjoy that as well. So thank you very much, and hope you have a good rest of the afternoon in beautiful Belize. Thank you, Henry, and thank you
All
all.
right. Thank you, Mike. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful day ahead, guys. Again, great session. Another reminder, please, guys, make note of it. Thursday, 12th of July at 9 a.m. We started this session at 10 a.m. This one starts an hour earlier. So thanks again, Mike. Great session. Thanks so much, Fabrizio. Thank you all, participants. And we look forward to seeing you guys on Thursday. And good luck to France. I'm biased today, Mike. All right. Have a great day, guys.